On today's episode, our special guest is going to teach us how to build professional human beings. I'm Bruno, and this is the Battle Plan. On today's episode, we have Jim Bagnolas, and his expertise and passion is in the field of leadership and body and mind management, with emphasis on the influence of thinking patterns on health, happiness, success, and the capacity to lead. He has been speaking and educating worldwide on 6 continents, as well as across the United States for over 25 years. I think it's a little bit more than that. Jim's workshop topics include leadership, stress management, customer service, coaching skills, and change, all in relation to the secret of the mind body connection. He inspires listeners to turn within and awaken to the reality of their own greatness. Jim's goal is very simple: to build professional human beings. Jim, welcome to the Battle Plan.
Thank you, Bruno. I love the introduction and your energy behind the introduction.
Thank you, Jim. You know what? I had to cut it down because we were just talking before starting the recording of the episode, and I asked you, how long have you been coaching? And you've told me 40 years. So now in the bio, it was saying, 25 years, but it's 40 years.
Yeah.
And I brought in, because we kind of know the coaches that are out there, which we'll be talking about. But for 40 years, it's been a long time.
Mhm. Well, I remember the first meeting at my first professional job, the University of Akron. We all sat down for my first meeting, and Mr. Larson, who was my mentor and now boss at the university at the financial aids office, he said, "We need a professional speaker. And Jim, you're the guy. I just graduated from college." And I was like, "Me?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "We have these things called college nights. And you go to in high school and speak to the parents on how to get admitted to a university and how to get financial aids. So you have 2 weeks to learn everything you can about those two things and then go answer questions."
Oh, wow.
And I remember opening the door and there were 150 people in the gymnasium waiting for me. And I remember closing the door and go back to the car. 150, I was 21 or 22 years old, and it was like, wow, my first professional speech. I'm getting paid to do this.
Hmm.
And that was 1971.
And how much did you get paid in 1971, Jim?
You
Just
know,
as a personal
I
question.
for let's see, for the University of Akron, it might have been around $10,000 a year.
Oh, so you were paid by the year, which is good. Like, because most of the speakers and myself personally, because I love um, what you said, that somebody pointed to you and said, "Jim, you're the man," which we call in the military being put in the breach. You're the guy. You're going to have to teach
Yeah.
this next lesson or whatever, which I find for me works extremely well. It
Yeah.
was the same thing for becoming a speaker after my North Pole expedition. They said, "Bruno, we want you to become a speaker and speak on behalf of veterans and do these things."
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I said, okay. At first, I did that for free, and then
Yeah.
it became $500, and then it came a little bit more.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah. So to ask in 1971, to be, how much did you get paid when you first started for your first gigs?
Well, speaking was just a part of the job.
Right.
There were probably 80% of the job, 70% was not going out and speaking. But somehow he saw that I could do it, and I didn't know I could do it yet. And it happened to be that I could. But professional speaking, I remember, probably 30 years ago, um, or so, somebody said, "I want you to speak at my conference, and I'll give you so much money." And I thought I had to pay to go to the conference.
Right. Because
I
there
didn't
are
under,
conferences like that.
I didn't understand that they were going to pay me.
Oh,
I,
wow.
so it was my first time getting paid for a speaking engagement. And then I learned to make partnerships with agents, and I
Right.
have agents now all over the world,
Right.
uh, and business partners all over the world who get me um, gigs, and then I do them, and they get 25%.
Right.
And in
Right.
Japan, they get 40%. They wanted 50.
Oh, wow. That is because we all know about agents. Once you get to a certain level and you're in demand, then having an agent is actually is going to help you asking for a higher price.
Yes,
And also because it's in their interest to be able to quote unquote sell you around. But
correct.
before we get too far onto the speakers, because the reason why I wanted you on the podcast was because you have your tagline is you build professional humans.
Yeah,
Obviously, I've done my research. And we're going to talk about Leeward Grant, which I
yeah,
love
yeah,
the story.
yeah.
But before we get there, my first question about today's world is what is the state of leadership in today's world? And the next part to that question is do you believe that anyone can be a leader?
So the state of it is in the hands of millennials like you, probably born between 1980 and 2000.
Well, I was born in 1974, so I'm a Gen X. Yeah.
Okay, right before you seem like a millennial to me, but
Yes.
millennials will make up 80% of the workforce in a few years. Right now,
Hmm.
it's about 60 or 70% are millennials born around. Sociologists don't agree on the times, but around 1980 to 2000. And they are people who believe in your second question that anyone can lead at the appropriate time.
Hmm.
So my tagline is see the need, take the lead when appropriate. Step
Because
up, going to the breach. The breach part is like step up,
mhm, it
right?
is step up, right? And so how do we explain that to today's millennial, right? Because we're both coaches and
Yeah.
we both teach on how to become the best version of themselves. This is my thing. I love, you say build professional human. I go, I'll show you how to understand your own human software. And
Same
basically,
goal.
same goal, exactly, right? Same goal, which is why I am so happy to have you here today. So what I like about what you just brought up is that at the appropriate time,
Right.
because in today's social media and today's kind of like entertainment and everything that we're seeing out there about these successful people and leaders per se, um, they're a certain breed or they're constantly leading from everywhere. Now, I understood from my military training where we actually have born leaders and we also have made leaders, which
Hmm.
are people that went through training and became a leader. But we also know there's a time to lead. How do you teach that to the younger generation of when to recognize when is your time to lead?
First of all, we make a distinction between managing and leading.
Mhm.
See, managers are made, and leaders, when I ask a millennial, what's the not one asset that you need to be a leader without which you cannot lead? What is it? What do you think they tell me?
Hmm. I would say
One
uh,
asset.
one asset. For me, I would say it's your ability to command the room, your presence.
Okay. If you had presence, then it's possible for you to get this one asset. If you have good communication skills, it's possible that you get this one asset. If you uh, have a good solution to the problem in front of us, you can get this one asset, most likely. You cannot lead unless somebody's following.
Right.
So the follower or followers are the assets that you absolutely have to have. If you think you're leading and nobody's following, you're taking a walk. You're just taking a walk.
I
You
love it.
so so when we find this out, this is okay. Now we have to have creativity to come up with a good solution to solve the problem in front of us. Good relationships with the people who would trust us. good track record that, we were successful before. These things come together to allow us to get a follower or
Mhm.
followers on a team, whether it's a military team or a team in business, doesn't matter. We have to have a solution to the problem. So we have to have creativity and intelligence. We have to have relationship. We have to have trust. If we have those things and we're confident in their eyes, they'll follow us. So, no, there are only a few people who are born leaders: twins, triplets, quads, because somebody followed you out.
Jim,
See,
oh man, you
see,
got these
people are
great
not
quotes.
born with followers. They're not born
Right.
with them. You have to earn it. You have to
Hmm.
learn the skills. Well, for instance, leading and following a leader, being a leader is not a gift. It's a skill. The skill of influencing people to follow you with those things that I just mentioned. So I think we're born with, all of us are born with certain natural abilities, but those abilities have to be honed.
They
You know,
have to if you want to make a living out of it, and if you want to take it to the next level, because we all do. I'm going to go off with a word here. I think it's important to the millennials or to anybody that's learning today. Is you said influence.
yeah,
Um, I tell people that we influence on a daily basis. We manipulate or influence to get the things that we want, whether with our spouse, with our kids, with the people that we work with. Influence. And I remember uh, um, what was his name? Dale Carnegie with How to Win Friends and Influence People. And
yeah,
I had turned away from that book so many times, Jim, because at the time for me, How to Win Friends and Influence People was a negative phrase for me, was a negative title, because I was like, why do I need to win friends and influence people? But when I read the book finally, which is a timeless classic,
yes,
it needs to be read multiple times, which I've done, read and listened to. Um, is influencing people. We do what's written in the book. We do it naturally. But like you just said, if you want to take it to the next level, you get to own those skills. Work on what I call your craftsmanship,
hmm,
which a lot of young people now are, I think, swayed or maybe misguided when they see now the influencers on social media, right? We say, oh, I'm just going to put on some makeup, or I'm just going to do some videos, and people are going to start following me. But there's a little bit more than that to influencing people. I think it's genuine care. I
hmm.
think it's about, making sure that you want to lead these people to a good space. What do you think?
Um, there are only two things that I think of when I'm coaching someone: the soul line and the goal line. The
Ooh.
goal line is what material things we want to accomplish on this planet while we're here.
Mm-hmm.
The soul line is what kind of character am I going to develop while I'm doing that? And which one of those can you take with you? Soul line.
The soul line, yeah.
See, we're going to take consciousness, character, integrity with us. You can't take anything else. There's, in the funeral procession, all your belongings aren't going behind you unless you're a pharaoh in Egypt. And
Exactly.
and they haven't taken them anyway. So um, this is the essence of becoming a professional human being. What kind of character are you developing while you're achieving these material goals? And that's the soul line. So the soul line is more important than the goal line. Or
I, I agree.
you started meditation, and in meditation, we call it 200% of life. You should have 200%. You should have the goal line achieved and the soul line achieved. Sort of developing this highest level of potential is developing your character.
It is. It
I,
is.
I
It's
know.
the soul contract that we're here to learn the lessons and to build that character, which you kind of come fall into once you do get quiet and silence. What transcendental meditation, as we both know, we're both practitioners,
Yes.
and we go inside. And like you said into your bio, like I read, which really hit me, is to inspire the listener to turn within and waking to the reality of their own greatness. And
Perfect.
I think that the only way you can realize what your soul contract is or your soul line is to actually go inside and awaken what's the possibility out there, which is why we do the work that we do, Jim. And so to come back to the building of professional humans that you do, you're now when we were talking about having you here on the podcast, you were, if I remember correctly, in Italy.
Yeah.
Then you came back to the state, and you often go to Romania.
Yes.
You're all over the world. And what is the one thing, like we were talking about, one of my questions I'll be coming up is, how easy it is somehow to become a coach today. But what it is that you see that most industries, or where you go, what are they looking for when they call you? What are their pain point, or what are they looking to get better by having you come in?
So, let's see, Wednesday, I'm going to Cambodia,
Okay.
working with the
Wow.
National Bank of Cambodia.
Mhm.
And they're actually looking for, if you want to coach someone, you shouldn't be a pop coach, a kind of uh, I'm a 10-day wonder. They used to call in Second World War the people who went through the officers training program in 90 days,
Right.
90-day wonders.
Right.
So for me, uh, I've had the experience of coaching for more than 30 years, but I had 2 years of master's program in applied psychology, which
Yes.
was the you had to have that. It was a pre-qualification to take the coaching class, which lasted a year. So it's another part of the master's program. So that's fine for me. I have intellectual kind of understanding along with the experience.
Hmm.
Um, and it depends on, so they're looking for authenticity, like authentically, are you a coach? Or what have you done? What's your experience? And I say, well, let me show you a letter here from one of my executives from Kroger. It's the second largest grocer in the world.
Right.
And he was a vice president who moved from California to Ohio, and he didn't change his dress. And in Ohio, they dress with three-piece suits, and he would come in with open neck shirt and his shirt out, Hawaiian shirt or something, and he embarrassed his direct reports. So in his letter to me after I coached him for a while, he said, "Well, you smashed my ego. You you made me see things that nobody else was going to tell me because he was a VP, and I changed my leadership style in the process." So I think authenticity, telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, telling people things that nobody else is going to tell them,
Hmm.
and not worrying about whether people like you or not. That coaches and trainers nowadays have to get over it.
Right.
And you are not to be liked. You are to help people develop. If
Hmm.
they like you or not like you, but they developed, doesn't matter.
Right.
Because some people like to shoot the messenger.
Of course. And, like they always said, the old adage that said, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. Right.
Yes,
And
correct.
that's to have those hard conversation. I think that in every coach's career or profession or timeline, for me, I noticed that there was three, when I talk to younger coaches and they're asking me, how to get clients or how to bring people on board or what's going to happen when I get them. There's three challenges, three hurdle that a coach has to go through. One is people don't know what a coach can do for them. Most people, unless they're into the corporate world or they've been into sports. Everybody knows what the sports coach could do, but what a life coach or a business coach or a high performance coach could do for you, one, they don't know that. So you have to explain that. That's the first hurdle. Second, once they realize what it could do for them, then there's a price point. People say they have no problem spending $200 on a Friday night, but they're not too sure about spending $200 on an hour that could actually change our session, that could actually change their lives. And the third one is the one we were talking about, where it was when you start having these deep conversation where the person has to look internally about what they've, how responsible and accountable they are in their lives. Most people will want to either quit at that time or pull back or revisit or deviate. um, is that what you're talking about when we're having the honest, serious, hard conversation with the client?
The more I coach, the less I talk. The more silence there is by me, because what I've learned is that there's something called beam of awareness coming from our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
If you close your eyes, that awareness is now on your thought process. If you're a meditator, the first thing you might do is now your attention is on a mantra.
Mm-hmm.
Then that awareness becomes aware of itself when we transcend in meditation. Okay, that awareness, when you open your eyes, goes out and on to the person who you're with. Now, you can make this person smarter or you can make them dumber. You by not paying attention to them, if they get anxious, angry, upset, greedy, whatever, they can drop their IQ by 40 points,
Wow.
because the mechanism in the brain is that I call it in my book going out of your mind. How often do you go out of your mind? And what that means is when you get upset, you activate the amygdala. The amygdala is the center of the limbic system, which handles the fight or flight response. So it sends all the blood away from the cortex, the genius, the prefrontal cortex, where we plan, analyze, think clearly, make decisions, from the cortex, the CEO of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And it sends the blood away from that to the arms to fight and the legs to run, fight or flight response. So when we're listening fully to someone and not thinking about what do I say next, thinking about what will they say next, where are you going? Where are you going? What I learned in my 2-year master's program was the client knows. If you allow them the space, create the space for them to discover. So this attention fully on the person in front of you, giving them this beam of awareness. It's like blessing somebody. Their IQ goes up while you're listening fully and interested authentically in where they're going next. And then asking the right questions to help them discover what it is that they're looking for. So important questions need to be asked. You know, what assumption are you making that is holding you in this position?
Right.
I was just coaching a woman from Armenia who's living in Russia, and she, every time she talks to me, it's somebody else is trying to control her.
Yes.
So
The old adage. Yeah.
first it was her mother, then it was her brother, now it's a lady she's living with in Russia. And so I said, let me ask you a question that you can ponder for a while. Days of pondering. Why do you bring to your life people who want to control you? What's the purpose of that? Because that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're the common thread through the whole, through the mother, through the brother, through the lady, through the boss.
The common denominator. Yeah.
People trying to control you. Why do you need that? And are you standing up to them? I just a question. Just, are you standing up for yourself, or for your values? What are you doing? Just think about it for a few days, then let me know. So she's thinking.
Oh, she's thinking right now because I was going to ask you, and what came out? But she's in the thinking phase right now. She's got homework to do.
Yeah, she's doing her homework right now in Moscow.
Right,
So,
in Moscow with
in
everything that's going
Moscow.
on with Russian. So, okay. So, what I like that we I believe in one of your videos as well, you were talking about the ability to convey a message using a story or a
Mhm,
metaphor, which
mhm.
is extremely powerful. I love using them, which brings us into I would like for you to bring us into Leroy Grant
Mm.
and the shoe shine business because for me first I loved your outfit that you were wearing during that video, right? Which
Yeah.
we'll use something similar for your thumbnail on the podcast with the ball cap with the tie and the thing. But can you tell us a little bit about that Leroy Grant, the shoe shiner? Or no, the
Oh,
leather technician, sorry.
yeah, the leather technician. Well, during my presentations on a professional human being, I come in the back of the hall dressed like that, and I begin to shine people's shoes.
Wow.
I don't put polish on, I brush the shoes.
Mhm.
And people are looking at me and they're laughing and they're enjoying this guy. This is our speaker and he's shining our shoes. And in some cultures, you know, they are ashamed to let me shine their shoe. Don't touch my shoe. You're the professor. You know,
Mhm.
don't shine the you can't. So in Japan, I can't even do it.
Mhm.
They
Wow.
have too much respect for the teacher. India, very hard to do it. Some cultures like that picture is from Romania and I or Ukraine, and they were easy to do. They
Right.
enjoyed it. And you know, one lesson was people don't start their profession to be great leaders. Everybody begins in a way that they serve someone. Their service, it's a service. And they become great in the eyes of other people, not in the eye in themselves. They're not thinking I'm great. It's through their service. So yeah, I came into a hotel once. I had to give a keynote address there in Dallas, and I looked at my shoes, and they were awful. So I got to find somebody here before 7 o'clock to get my shoe shine because 7 o'clock is my go time. And there it was. He was cleaning up at one of those shoe shine stands, and I went over and tapped him on the shoulder, an African American man, and I said, you know, do you have time for another shine? One more shine. Looks like you're going home. And he said, son, if you need a shine, I will make the time.
I
I
love it.
sat I sat down, you know, and I said, wow, you know, it's 6 p.m. When do you start? He said, 6 a.m. I said, you're here 12 hours a day? He said, well, just 6 days a week. And I said, do you mind me ask you how old you are? And he said, I'm 72. Wow. How long have you been a shoe shiner, Leroy? Well, he told me his name. You know, he introduced himself. So, you know, Leroy, how long you been? She said, I'm not a shoe shiner. Oh, well, what are you? I'm a leather technician. Well, what's the difference between a leather technician and a shoe shine? He said, I guarantee my work. Plus, you're going to get the best shine you ever got in your life. And if you can't buff it up for 2 weeks, you come in here and get a free shine. That's a professional. That's a leather technician. That's an artist. I'm an artist. And I was thinking about it. I said, wow, this guy's already energized me after a long, tiring day. And I got to go in and energize 200 engineers. So I'm, you know, just asking him how long? He said, this year, 60 years. Started when I was 12 years old. My father told me I wouldn't make any money shining shoes, but I would see these guys. I would have to sell newspapers, which I didn't like. And I'd have to, I'd look in the barber shop where they're shining shoes and they're laughing and having fun. I thought that's what I want to do. So I went into the owner of the barber shop and I said, I'd like to learn how to shine shoes. Could you teach me? And I'll work for only tips. And the guy said, you know, I see you working hard out there selling newspapers. Absolutely, I'll teach you. So he did. After 3 months, he went into his dad. He said, Dad, here's what I did. I still sold the newspapers. I obeyed you, but I shined shoes. Here's how much money I made shining shoes. And here's how much money I made selling newspapers. And my dad said, son, time to shine shoes. And he said, and I just love it because, and he made this kind of a movement with his hands towards the floor. And he said, my mission is I beautify the world down low. That's my mission. I beautify the world down low.
He
You know?
starts at the foundation, working on the
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah.
Your
At the shoe
shoes.
foundation. Anyway, I went in, I'm cutting it short. I told this story to the engineers. I said, if you do your job like this guy does his job, they were creating the Dallas area rapid transit system
Right.
at that time. And said, if you do your job, this is going to be the best rapid transit system in the country. If you take your level of engineering to the level of being an artist, like he has, he's got a mission. He loves his customer. He said he was having fun. He stayed overtime for me. He at 72, actually, he did say, you know, son, I'm married and my wife doesn't want me at home. That's why I spend so much time at work. If you've been married as long as I have, you know. Anyway, three months later, I went back there just to see him from
Right.
across town from the Kroger company, across town. I'm walking towards him and he looks at me. Are you the guy who went in and gave a talk about the leather technician? And I went, yeah. And he said, son, I owe you money. I said, why? He said, I had the longest line for 3 days from that conference. Those people were lining up for they wouldn't go to the next guy over because I'm the leather technician. They weren't. Anyway, what he did
Wow.
is he inspired me because it doesn't matter what you do. It matters how you do it and what you bring to it. He was a professional, man. This guy was, I'd put him up against, and I'd tell the story still at the beginning of my lectures about professional human being. I said, this is the first one. You read my book, you'll read about maybe 60 of them in my book, but he's number one.
He did because he made an impact on you. There's two things that come out of this story that you tell, which is a beautiful story, by the way, and it never gets old. And one is I'm going to start with the one that you said. One thing that I've found is that you were 3 months later. I went back to see him from across town. So right there, I picked up. He made an impact on you, and
Absolutely.
he inspired you. And in a day where status is gauged by your money or your success or whatever that is, what it looks like on the outside, this leather technician, I'll get it right one day. The leather technician inspired you, Jim,
He
to
did.
a point where you went back. But not only that, is that you made an impact on him. The ripple effect started and reversed to him when these guys started lining up for his business.
Correct. Yeah. This is life.
Wow.
This is life.
This
You know,
is life.
um,
Exactly. Because
without
sorry, go ahead.
without partners, I'm a nobody in all the countries that I go to. I have
Right.
an office in Romania, Tokyo, had one in Kiev, going to one in Phnom Penh. These are all with my partners.
Right.
Without them, I'm a nobody. With me, we're win-win-win.
Mhm.
We have a win-win situation. They're making money. I'm making money. We're serving a customer together, and it's you know, Tokyo is Global Coaching Association,
Right.
and so global. It's a global effort, and I've been going to Japan for now 8 or 9 years, and it's unbelievable because we're transforming their culture in a way to make it more millennial friendly because there are two kinds of leadership extremes. One is hierarchical, which is
Mhm.
Japan, and
Japan,
the other
yes.
is egalitarian, which
Mhm.
is millennial. I want to be equal to everyone.
Right.
I work with people. I don't work for them. I want my time. I want life work balance.
Yes.
You know, these are the. It has to be a millennial friendly philosophy, or they're not going to do it.
Exactly. And I agree with you. I think that the millennials are bringing that work-life balance back into the big picture. And unfortunately, but fortunately, I think that COVID pushed that, did the tipping point, because I remember working corporate where some executive were asking me, Bruno, what is it about these young millennials that don't want to work? They want 3 months off, or they want to work from the road, or they want, and at that point, I found myself being Gen X, being the bridge of generation and being understanding, because I know that in one of your interviews, you were talking about you can reverse age because you ask the young people, which is called reverse mentoring, on teaching you about their culture and their needs. But one thing that we did see was that the old CEO, or the old culture CEO, was saying, I need them to be here 9 to 5, crushing this time. And they're saying, no, we can work, and we can work from home. I want to work from Thailand. I want to work from here and there because I want to enjoy life as I'm doing it. And COVID has pushed them to do that. That's actually the genuine CEO and executive came back and said, Bruno, I should have done that years ago. I would have saved on overhead. I would have saved, and production is up. So
Yep.
millennials are bringing this thing. I think that what's missing from the millennial is what we call maybe work ethic, or willing to spend some of your time on your craft, which is one I want to bring back Leroy in. When you said that Leroy looked at the shoe shiners across the street and saw that they were happy, he went in and he said, I'll work for you for just tips if you show me how to shine shoes, to learn the craft. I've done that as a speaker. I've done that as a coach. I know that you've done it as well. Tony Robbins talks about it. A lot of coaches from that have a lit 10 or plus years of experience have worked on their craft. How do
Mhm.
we get the young generation to understand that? Because I get they don't want to work for free, the internship anymore. But where do you bring the value that it is that you can't get anywhere else but to go in and exchange your time for learning a craft like coaching?
You know, this time period is, I can place an order today on Amazon and I get it tomorrow.
Right,
I can swipe right and I have a date.
right.
I can, you know, it's like immediate gratification is what's happening today, and millennials expect it. Their expectation is immediacy.
Well,
And
Jim, you can be a coach for $7 on Facebook, and an LP coach for $7 on Facebook. There's ads everywhere.
wow, well, I will probably skip that uh, opportunity.
No, I'm a neuro linguistic programming master practitioner, but it didn't cost me $7. That's all I'm gonna say.
I bet. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
There are two things that are essential, and one I'm still working on myself. I All my teams are mostly millennials.
Mhm.
In Romania, they're all millennials and me, and
Cool.
so they teach me a lot. And but I also have some of their characteristics, which the number one characteristics is impatience,
Mhm.
and impatience doesn't work for career or relationships. It takes a long time to develop both of them. As you saw in my videos, you saw me probably 30, 35 years ago. If I was talking about wrap my ideas in a story, that was when I first became a speaker.
Yeah, you were on a TV show, I believe, or you were
Yeah,
on
yeah.
something with a beautiful suit that just stood out square and nice. It was good to see.
You know, I'm Italian, so I got to dress like an Italian.
Yes.
But it takes a long time to master a craft. You know, some people say 10,000 hours
Mhm.
of doing one thing, and then you can be a master. And you know, and you never. I remember they asked Michael Jordan once. this guy was interviewing him and said, "So how does it feel to be the best basketball player ever?" And Michael Jordan, where'd you hear that? He said, "Where'd you hear that?" Well, it's just known by everyone. Yeah, well, he said, not known by me. He said, I am a work in progress, man. I just took 500 shots from 15 feet because my percentage is down. Does that sound like the best basketball player ever? No. He said, the problem with people is they might think they are. And when they think they are, they stop trying to be. He said, I will never stop trying to be the best ever. I will work on this craft. He's the only professional that got um, MVP for both defense and offense.
Wow. Yeah.
Most of them get it in offense only.
Hmm.
He got it on offense and defense one time together,
Hmm.
which blew people's mind. And if you watch him ever on a, he's scrambling for the basketball on the floor like everybody else is scrambling.
Yeah.
He's not a prima donna. He's a worker boy.
He is. He is his work ethics, and I've watched a few of his documentary because my son plays basketball, so I like to see what it is and to bring that us. But once again, these masters at their craft are constantly learning. For us, because I was watching one of the interviews you were doing, I believe was in Romania with two young ladies,
Yes.
um, and then they ask you, tell us about Jim. And I actually wrote those down because they were impactful to hear. The first thing you started this, well, if I was telling you about Jim, you say he's a meditator, he's an exerciser, he's a reader, but mostly now listening more than on audiobook. He's a learner, right? And then which brought you to you can reverse the age, which is reverse mentoring. I listen to these young people now, which is reversing your age, you're saying. But the learner part, we continue to learn. I was pretty amazed by what you dropped this. So tell us a little bit more about who Jim really is, because that's what keeps you at the top of your industry, basically, and keeps you going by these things. Would you
I
say?
think you hit it that, I read a book a week or listen to a book a week now,
Mhm.
at least. And if I'm preparing like I am for the National Bank of Cambodia, I listen to books that relate to my topic because
Right.
even if I get one or two new ideas that I can share with them off of somebody else, fantastic. Um, so I'm always a work in progress, always trying to get better, um, stay healthy, meditate to advance my state of consciousness. I remember, at age 13, I went to a monastery, Franciscan monastery, because
Oh,
I
wow.
I was reading these lives of the saints, and said, man, I want to do all these things. These saints are flying through the air. They're levitating. They're reading
Saint
people's minds.
Francis of Assisi, right? Saint
Yes,
Francois
Saint Francis
d'Assise,
of
yes.
Assisi,
The
Saint Teresa
Catars.
of Avila, Saint Anthony. Uh, anyway, I went to the monastery and I stayed there a year, and I realized they didn't have the answer now. There was a priest called Padre Pio, and he was living all he had all these powers, and I wanted those, but they didn't seem to be telling me how to do that. And I remember the last day I spent at the monastery, I went to the rector and I said, I spent a year here and I came here to see God and I did not see him. And I'm disappointed. And you've been here for 40 years. When did you see him? And he said, well, you got to have faith. And I said, man, I'm 13. And he said, well, then you have to have patience. And I said, well, okay, how long did it take you to see God? Now he looked out the window for 5 minutes. It seemed like forever. And then he turned back to me and told me the truth. If he'd have lied, I might have stayed. But he said, I haven't seen him yet.
Hmm.
And I said, what I want you to do right now is to call my parents. Tell them to come after me because I'm not going to stay here for 40 years and not see God. I'm not. When I when I was a freshman and I went home, when I
Mhm.
was a freshman in college, they're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in my psychology class.
Right.
Excuse me, professor, how do we get this top self-actualization thing? How do we get that?
Mhm.
And he said, I'm sorry to tell you, Jim, only 2%, Maslow said only 2% can get that. And people like Einstein, and he named several people, and he said, and Mr. Bagnola, you are not an Einstein.
Oh, look at all those dream stealers telling us what's not possible for them,
So I
right?
said, yeah. So
Yeah.
I said, I always say, like to my foot doctor when I was a kid, I have absolutely flat feet. I mean, they're like duck, no arch. And Dr. Muckley, I remember him clearly, like I remember Dr. Popplestone in my psychology class. These guys told me what I can't do. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do both of those. So Dr. Muckley said, you have flat feet. You will never be an athlete. So I lettered in 3 sports and got a scholarship in baseball to college.
I love it, Jim. I
And
love it.
and ran a 10.5 yard, not meter dash. That was pretty good at that time,
Yes.
10.5.
Mhm.
And so, I did those things because you told me I couldn't, and I liked it. I like you. What? I'm not an Einstein? Huh. We'll see about that. And now, when you look at transcendental meditation, it's not 2%. It's anybody starting from any level of consciousness can achieve self-actualization.
Right.
And that's scientific research. It's not an opinion of mine. It's a meta-analysis of, I think it was 42 different studies, showed that meditating, transcendental meditation, is 3 to 4 times more productive in getting somebody to be self-actualized, because you can
Mhm.
measure it
Yeah.
can be measured. There are many ways to measure it.
Yeah, and we went through that with Gary Foster, your friend.
I
Um,
listened to
who-
that. I listened to that. Yeah, it was
yeah.
great.
Thank you, because we wanted to bring up exactly what you just said, the science. But I think for me and the people that are listening, is what you just said is anyone can do it. You
Yes.
just need to make the decision that you want to learn something new.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do, as you I mentioned, executives and CEOs and people that get to a certain point in their lives where they achieve everything they were told to, and then the question becomes, now what? Which they don't have an answer, so they either fall into drinking, alcoholism, drugs, getting the young secretary as a girlfriend, or the brand new Ferrari. And instead of getting there, they reach out, and then we figure that things out. One of the thing constant, or the common denominator, is that they stop learning. That's one of the things, that they've stopped learning at some point. They went to school, they've learned about their business or their careers, and then they've reached the what they would call the top, which we both know is never the top. It's just a level. um, and then they stop learning, and they've stopped doing things that they like, that's actually for their soul, which brings us back to the soul lines of, I say, you're probably doing 100 things of 100 of the things you don't like, and 0 of the things that you do like, which I bring in the transcendental meditation. I said, how much time do you spend with yourself
Mm.
or for yourself? Right. So I think that what to bring in more into what I was getting at is to bring in more of self actualization, and to learn, to grow, and to make that decision. I think people get stuck there because they say, I went to school, or I've got this degree, or I've reached, I've got the wife, the kids. What what do you see prevents people from moving forward?
There are two kinds of ways to discover things and explore. So Ray Dalio, owner of Bridgewater,
Mhm.
who is a meditator and who has most of his company at 1500 meditating, he owns a ship with a submarine on board. His exploration is not only that he meditates, but he explores the ocean in his own submarine.
Right.
Okay. So that's where his exploration takes place. Then you got uh, several rich, wealthy people who are exploring space, right? Are we going to go to Mars? We got to find a place to live. We're ruining our planet. So let's go there.
Hmm.
And so they're exploring outer space. Well, one of my friends who had been meditating for more than 50 years, he is a Mensa, meaning he is a genius. Um, he just passed away, but he wanted to let people know that really the place to explore is the inner space, consciousness, because it's the infinite space. Everything else is finite. Even outer space, it's finite. The ocean floor is finite. It's not infinite. And so the infinite part of us is consciousness. Physics tells us, it can neither be created nor destroyed. It is. It's pure energy.
Yes.
And so it will continue on forever, if we can wrap our minds around foreverness. but but it's forever, and it's the only thing that is, and it's the only thing that really satisfies.
Hmm.
when
I
you
agree.
when you know that you're part of everything, then you're satisfied. Everything else is a tease. Everything else is a dopamine addiction. It's like gambling, drinking, smoking, anything. It activates dopamine, which is a pleasure. I feel pleasure, and then it goes away. Like any game, any app,
Or the
they're
phone.
the
The phone.
phone,
Yeah.
they're made to addict,
Yeah.
because those apps get paid for how many people you have on it and how many times they come back to it during the day. And that's
Exactly.
because you keep getting hits of dopamine. So it gives you pleasure, but not satisfaction. If it gave you satisfaction, you wouldn't have to go back. So
Hmm.
the only thing that satisfies is this internal dimension, which connects you with the rest of the universe.
With source.
Yeah, so the definition, the founder of transcendental meditation, Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, said spirit is the non-material material that the entire universe is made of.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
non-material material that the entire universe is made. So once you are in touch with spirit consciousness, then you're in touch with everything, because everything is made of it.
Hmm.
And so you become satisfied. Wow, I'm everything. I don't have to seek anything. I am everything. And so that's the exploration of internal um, space, because it's infinite. It's never going to end. And even when we reach the highest level of self-actualization, self-realization, just keeps going. Everything keeps evolving. So um, that's my answer to, what should we explore? We
Right.
should you have to sit and close the eyes to explore your internal space. So it's an investment of time and effort. You still have to do it. You have to sit and do it and make time to do it. Everything revolves around activity, not rest.
Hmm.
And so when you start transcendental meditation, then you can switch and have everything revolve around that rest, not around activity. And that's where I live, here near Maharishi International University, where everybody meditates at the same time. So if you kind of start feeling, whoa, it's time to go inward. Everybody's going in, you
Right.
know.
Which I love when we meditate in a group, you feel that energy compared to
Yes,
when I'm trying to do it. I find that when we're in a group or at the center, the TM center, when I go see Gary and Ellen, that I just go deeper and it's easier and there's less interference, I find,
there's a
into my
reason.
meditation. Yeah.
There's a reason for that. There's an inward and outward stroke of meditation. We begin the mantra and go in, and then when we're releasing stress, we come out.
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
So what happens in your group is that somebody is always on the inward stroke of meditation, and you get the benefit, even if you're on the outward stroke.
Right.
So somebody's on the inward stroke, and I'm connected with that. So I'm in while they're in, even though I'm out. So we always get the benefit of others in their deep, coherent state of transcending. We get the benefit of that too.
Yes, we do. And I love the power of the group meditation.
Yep.
But it does, like you say, a daily practice every morning. And now I find enjoyment. Now I seek it to come and sit down and do my meditation. Because before, to describe what you were saying about finding that dopamine hit, I describe it as a way of people trying to fill a square hole with a round peg. And
Mm.
it's just, it's not going in, and you're not filling that need that you have. When I started TM and meditation and yoga and everything else that brought me peace or going internal, is when I started to get fulfilled. I started to fill that cup that needed to be filled. As we know, you and I, we're constantly pouring out of our cup to other people when we are coaching and when we are guiding or mentoring. And I needed a way to fill that up. And as a young man going into corporate or the military, I was taught and conditioned to think that, we all go out for beers, or we all go out for this, or we all go out for that. And we replenish that way, which now I know was actually draining us more. And until I found Gary and Ellen and found the power of transcendental meditation, where you actually go inside, and you describe it so well, as finding that inner peace that fulfills you, that fills that cup that we need to be able to make changes in this world.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. It's a simple decision of experiencing something that is non-material. And this is why it's hard to talk about it, because it's not material. It's
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, meaning not that it is related to any religion at all.
No, it's
Uh,
not.
it doesn't replace anything. It doesn't replace prayer or religion or exercise or diet or sleep. You have to do all those things. It makes meditation better. It,
Mm-hmm.
it helps meditation to work. If you don't sleep, meditation won't work. You'll fall asleep because it's so natural. You'll get what you need.
Right.
So, I when people ask me why are you successful, I would say meditation and partners and learning
Mm-hmm.
are the three things that just come to my mind right away. If I'm
Meditation,
successful,
partners, and learning.
yeah,
Right.
yep.
That is three good tips, because people, we catch on from the people that are teaching out there, which bring me to my two last questions, because we could go all day on these things. One thing is, you did mention that you're training millennials now, the younger generation, to take over for Jim. Is that what's happening next for Jim?
Well, I plan never to retire, but I plan to give out everything I own to the millennial uh, generation.
Mhm.
So I want to create a way of understanding leading and leadership and management that's millennial friendly. And so in Romania, that's what I'm doing. I've handed it kind of over to my 20 people, but I continue to go there and present to the executive level, and they do the other levels of the organization.
Great.
So
Fantastic.
doing it in Japan and doing it in Phnom Penh, Cambodia next week. And yeah, it's kind of my own mission that I choose to have.
It's a
Um,
beautiful mission.
my
Passing on.
my ancestor was uh, Bradford, who was the first governor of the colonies of the United States
Oh, wow.
on my mother's side.
Hmm.
And so I was just looking at how they tracked it back to William Bradford,
Right.
the first governor of the colonies. And, they kind of rebelled against England, and then, created what we live in now. So I thought, why am I interested in leadership? Well, my first ancestor to step on this land was a leader
Right.
leading the community. Uh, so that's an interesting point for me. That's why it's in my DNA.
Hmm. To be a leader and to teach the younger generation. When I was first in the fitness industry, there was this coach called Twist. I can't remember his first name, but one of his main mantra or his main quote was, every I will teach you everything I know, because anything I don't teach you will go, when I die, will go with me. Something similar to that. It will be lost forever.
Perfect.
And that is why I also, when I'm coaching and I'm teaching younger coaches, is I give everything I know, because then they're gonna take on, and they'll use what is useful for them. But I'll know from my heart that I've given everything that I've learned, because everything that I've learned is also not mine, is somebody that passed it on to me. And
Right.
then I made my little twist on it, or my version of how it made sense to me,
When
which,
people say self-made, I don't agree with it. I
right,
we're
there's no
made
such thing.
by, yeah, we're in my book, I think I listed 60 people in the back
Yeah,
who helped me
exactly.
with this book or with training in that area of called professional human being. So there
Mhm.
were 60 there.
Yeah, 60. Wow, that's a good recognition. Which leads me to the last question before we close this up. What advice would you give to young Jim, who's just starting out 40 years ago? With everything you've learned, right? You've seen the timeline. We talk about higher self. You're the higher self now. What lesson would you teach the young you? What
Uh,
advice?
I gave a talk in Huntsville, Canada. It was a 3-day conference to teachers of TM about what a professional speaker is and does.
Mhm.
And in that audience was Dr. Manohar, an Ayurvedic physician. All of the people, David Shaw bought a book for everybody, my book. After the conference was over, Dr. Manohar took a flight to Japan and he read my book on the way. And he started treating people in Japan. And one of his patients came and he said, you know, Fuji-san, what do you do? And he said, I'm a leadership consultant. Oh, Dr. Manohar said, you need to read this book. I just left a conference. This guy does the same thing you do. So he read my book, sent me an email, said, I would like to send your book to 25 executives who read English in Japan because I think this book is needed in Japan. Do you mind? Do I mind? Uh, and so he sent it to 25 executives. They come back with one paragraph of what they thought, and almost every one of them said, Japan needs to read this book now. So he
Wow.
took that to a publisher. They published my book in Japanese. It went to number one in a month.
Wow, Jim.
So, what I would tell my younger self is everybody you meet is superior to you in some way. And in that, I learn of them, and they can be your most powerful partner. Every time I see Manohar, I thank him for my partner in Japan and my travels to Japan for the last 8 years because of him. So anyone can be this spark of success that you don't even see. I didn't see that. I didn't expect him to do that, but he did.
But
And
he
now
did.
I know thousands of people in Japan.
Right.
You know,
which
so
br- which brings around once again to tie a nice bow on this episode about you being an impact, and on Leroy, and Leroy inspiring you and creating these ripple effect around the world of everywhere we go. We never know the impact we will have on somebody's life by just being present. Jim, this was one for me, was an incredible opportunity. I'm so grateful for you to take your time to come over onto the Battle Plan podcast. We will leave in the description your video on YouTube's, your channel. We'll also leave your website and where they can reach you. Is there any other thing, or what the name of the book is? I believe, um,
becoming a professional human being.
Becoming a Professional Human
It,
Being.
it,
If they
it's
want to, we'll
it's
put
in
that as
Amazon.
well
It's on Amazon. It's
on
Amazon. It's available.
Amazon. Jim,
Yeah.
I thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim.
See
Guys,
you.
this has been the battle plan. And if you want any, if you have any comments, or if you have any questions, please send them down below. If you have some for Jim, we'll send them in an email. We'll make sure to connect you guys if you want to. We'll send you there. So thank you very much for watching this episode of the battle plan. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Bruno.
Bye, Jim.